In a major announcement, the United States has unsealed terrorism charges against Hamas's top leadership for their roles in a decades-long campaign to try and murder American citizens, and for their roles in the deadly October 7th massacre. The charges call out Hamas's leadership not only in Gaza, but also in Lebanon and Qatar. The details in the following report. The United States Justice Department announced on Tuesday it's bringing terrorism and criminal charges against Hamas's top leaders for their roles in planning, supporting, and perpetrating the October 7th massacre, which killed some 1,200 people, including over 40 Americans.
Today, the Justice Department unsealed charges against Yahya Sinwar and other senior leaders of Hamas for financing and directing a decades-long campaign to murder American citizens and endanger the security of the United States.
The complaint names 6 defendants, among them Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, Khalid Mashal, Hamas's leader residing in Qatar, and Ali Baraka, a senior Hamas official based in Lebanon. The other 3 defendants, former Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, former military wing chief Mohammed Daif, and former deputy military commander Marwan Issa, have all since been killed.
As outlined in our complaint, those defendants, armed with weapons, political support, and funding from the government of Iran and support from Hezbollah, have led Hamas's efforts to destroy the state of Israel and murder civilians in support of that aim.
The Attorney General also said that the U.S. was investigating the murder of American-Israeli hostage Hersh Goldberg Polin, whose body was recovered over the weekend by the IDF. According to Reuters, citing a Justice Department official, U.S. prosecutors brought the charges against Hamas already in February, but kept the complaint under seal in the hopes of capturing Haniyeh. And joining us now with more on the U.S. Justice Department's announcement of terrorism charges against Hamas leadership is Eugene Kontorovich, head of the International Law Department at the Kohelet Policy Forum. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So this is a major announcement, and before we get into its significance, I want to ask, why did the U.S. choose to unseal these charges now? Does it have anything to do with the fact maybe that the Biden administration is presenting its final hostage deal, maybe trying to put pressure on Hamas? I mean, what's your take?
So I don't think it's a major announcement. I think it's a weak and embarrassing announcement. After Hamas executed a high-profile U.S. hostage in cold blood, just after his parents addressed the Democratic National Convention, there was obviously a question: what was the response of the United States going to be? What's the United States going to do to Hamas and its supporters for this premeditated barbaric crime against American citizens? And the answer seems to be America doesn't plan to do anything. Instead, they simply revealed that several months ago, 6 months ago, they had charged Hamas officials in federal court. And these charges, I should say, are, I think it's a good thing to do, but it is grossly inadequate because the United States has not done anything to actually secure custody over these people. Criminal charges in the U.S. are really not a big threat for Hamas officials any more than ICC indictments. Some of these people have also been indicted by the ICC, because the most likely thing that's going to happen to Hamas officials is they're going to be killed in the war by Israel. So being able to actually pop out of the tunnel and say, America, I surrender, arrest me, that's actually a way out for people like Sinwar, and actually gives them an escape hatch. What it also shows is that since February, America has been negotiating with and negotiating a system which Hamas would survive after having indicted the Hamas leadership for crimes and terrorism against American citizens. I think that's deeply embarrassing. And also, the February charges show that Hamas has been doing this, that is to say, targeting American citizens and engaging in terrorism, since the 1990s, since 1997. So why did it take so long to charge them?
That's a very interesting analysis. And I want to ask, though, the United States has named not only Hamas leaders in Gaza, but it's also called out the Islamic Republic of Iran, it's called out Lebanon, and it has called out Qatar for aiding and harboring Hamas. I mean, what do you make of this? Is the U.S. finally putting some pressure, perhaps, on these countries for aiding and abetting Hamas?
But there is no pressure, right? That is to say, there is no pressure, right? The indictment clearly shows that and states that officials in Lebanon and Iran worked with Hamas. That's not news. The question is, what's America doing to them? We know that America has actually been pushing for a ceasefire in Lebanon that would even see Israel move its troops back from the border and even re-demarcate the border in Lebanon's favor. America is under no illusion that Iran, Lebanon, Hamas are Gazan or terrorist cabals. But the foreign policy of the Biden-Harris administration seems to be the best thing to do with terrorists is negotiate with them.
And so what happens now? I mean, will the U.S. try to deport Mashal from Qatar, America's major non-NATO ally, Baraka from Lebanon, to face justice? Or, as you said, is this all just one big PR stunt?
I want to emphasize, nothing has changed from today to yesterday. These charges were filed February 1st. Has America tried to get Mashal out of Qatar since then? No. Have they applied pressure to Qatar? No. Instead, they've promoted Qatar to a chief mediator of the hostage situation, which Qatar themselves helped facilitate. So we see that these indictments are a kind of lip service, but there's really nothing behind it, right? They have not been seeking to get Mashal up, and they have not been even seeking to force on Sinwar an arrangement that would require his arrest for trial.
All right, well, Eugene, thank you so much for this interesting analysis today.
My pleasure. Good talking to you. Take care.
Contradicting remarks by Prime Minister Netanyahu, the United States says that Israel has agreed to withdraw from parts of the Philadelphia route as part of a hostage for ceasefire deal and from all of Gaza in the second phase. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
According to White House Security Advisor John Kirby, Israel agreed to a proposal calling for an IDF pullout from crowded areas of the Philadelphia corridor in Phase 1 and full withdrawal if the hostage for ceasefire deal reaches Phase 2. The State Department said this.
Over the coming days, the United States will continue to engage with our partners in the region to push for a final agreement. During talks last week, we made progress on dealing with the obstacles that remain, but ultimately, finalizing an agreement will require both sides to show flexibility. It will require that both sides look for reasons to get to yes, rather than reasons to say no.
The comment contradicted the declaration by Prime Minister Netanyahu a day earlier that Israel must remain indefinitely on the 14-kilometer-long Egypt-Gaza border access, describing it as an existential strategic asset.
And with the fight against Hamas waging on and Israel facing threats on multiple fronts, the IDF and Israel's security forces are working tirelessly to ensure we stay safe and protected. Nechama and Hatzalah for Israel is a remarkable organization doing everything they can to support our heroes amid these challenging times. So if you want to show your support and show our soldiers that they are not alone, make sure to scan the QR code now. Let's take a look.
The Nechama and Hatzalah for Israel organization was founded by Moshiko and Shmulik Moskowitz in an effort to provide hope and support to soldiers and security forces. Operating from Ramat Gan, the Moskowitz brothers have established a state-of-the-art command center dedicated to gathering significant donations for both the IDF and civilians affected in Gaza and northern Israel.
Here we have a lot of medical equipment, as you see behind me, and military equipment like vest. And from here, the units come and collect it, or sometimes we go into the field and deliver it directly to them.
A unique aspect of their work involves regular visits to army bases in the south, where they bring comfort to soldiers in the form of ice cream and warm meals. Multiple times a week, the organization's signature ice cream van travels to these bases, providing soldiers with treats that offer a taste of home.
Nechama and Hatzalah Institute came today and donate all this ice cream to the soldiers so they can get a little break from all the stress that they are into. I'm myself in reserve, and my little brother is injured in the Gaza Strip, so it's very personal to me, like to get all these donations to the field itself. I got these donations, so I know how important it is and how satisfying and how fulfilling this to get all this love from the civilians in Israel. And this is really important work because there is not a lot and we need more.
These visits are not just about food. They are about lifting morale and showing the soldiers that they are appreciated and supported by the communities they defend. In the midst of their difficult duties, these moments of comfort can be a source of strength, reminding them that they are not alone.
When you give them things from home, like everybody remember like Friday lunch with schnitzel and baguette, give them strength. Give them strength because they feel somebody support them and be with them. Give them strength because now they know better what they're fighting for.
With decades of experience in emergency services, Moshiko Moskowitz, who also serves on the front lines in Gaza, is working alongside his brother Shmulik to ensure that support reaches the right place at the right time.
You see us now in the field. There's no middleman. It's like what we receive from the gracious donation that people support us is going directly to the field, directly to the soldiers, as you can see.
Nechama and Hatzalah for Israel's initiatives extend beyond financial aid, encompassing advocacy and awareness campaigns. The Moskowitz brothers exemplify dedication and compassion, bridging support between the Israel Defense Forces and civilians in need. Their mission brings together communities from across the globe to support those impacted by conflict.
It's amazing that you actually made a day, even the week, when they're thinking about that somebody came to the field and give them ice cream and a warm meal. They're eating like only food from can every day, and like they say, okay, we had one normal from home, like one meal. So I felt amazing, and I'm sure you do also.
And the IDF's anti-terror operation, dubbed Summer Camp, is ongoing in northern Samaria with the current focus in both Jenin and Tulkarem. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz has more.
Israeli forces killed 3 terrorists as the IDF dubbed Summer Camp anti-terror operation in the cities of Jenin and Tulkarem continued for a 7th day. Hundreds of Israeli troops backed by helicopters and drones have been operating in Jenin and Tulkarem as well as other areas of northern Samaria for the past week in a drive the IDF says is aimed at combating gunmen before they can stage terror attacks outside their towns. Both Hamas and Islamic Jihad gunmen exchanged fire with Israeli forces in Jenin and Tulkarem, which have seen repeated clashes between Israeli troops and armed gunmen over recent months. With the latest deaths, a total of at least 34 Palestinians have been killed during the operation, many of them members of armed factions. 1 Israeli soldier was killed in Jenin. In a separate incident, 3 police officers were killed last week by a gunman who fired on their vehicle near Hebron. Engineering forces of the Yehuda Brigade worked overnight in the village of Idna to map out the house of the terrorist who carried out the shooting attack on the officers. The mapping was done in preparation for the demolition of the terrorist's home.
And day 334 of the war in Gaza, and the IDF killed the Nukba force commander who led the massacre on October 7th at Nativ HaSara and personally murdered an Israeli father in front of his 2 young sons. Meanwhile, on Israel's northern border, Hezbollah fired over 60 rockets into Israel, with several impacting the northern city of Kiryat Shmona and causing damage to at least 1 home, though no injuries have been reported. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The IDF is still operating with extreme caution in the Rafah area due to the danger of harming Israeli hostages, possibly held nearby. This after IDF Chief Herzi Halevi earlier visited the tunnel in Rafah, where the bodies of 6 hostages were found over the weekend after they were executed when their Hamas captors knew that the IDF was approaching. But elsewhere in Gaza, the IDF is continuing to seek out and destroy major targets. The Nukba force company commander who led the invasion of Nativ HaSara was killed in an airstrike. The IDF targeted and killed the Hamas commander who murdered an Israeli father in front of his kids on October 7th. Ahmed Wadia was the terrorist filmed drinking Coca-Cola from a family home in Gaza before murdering Gil Tassa in front of his 2 sons. And another major terror tunnel was discovered and later demolished. The forces located weapons, electrical infrastructure, and a transport rail along the route. Forces from the engineering unit of the Gaza Division and Yalam uncovered and destroyed the underground offensive route in the Beit Lahia area. The length of the route that was destroyed reached a length of over 1 kilometer. And fighter jets from the Air Force attacked under the direction of the Shin Bet and the Gaza Division, a compound used by Hamas terrorists near Al-Ikhya Hospital in Gaza City.
And as the war wages on, the economy has taken a hit, with the war so far costing 250 billion shekels, or roughly around $67 billion. Finance Minister Smotrich has presented new plans to finance these high costs. ILTV's Ariella Lachiani joins us from the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange with more. Ariella, what can you tell us?
Yes, thank you, Ladar. So Finance Minister Smotrich has stated that we are not only in the longest, but also the most expensive war in this country's history, with a total of 200 to 250 billion shekels in direct costs. Now, he's laid out an initial state budget framework for 2025 based on a deficit of 4% of GDP to tackle these high costs. And he's laid out several proposals as to how he expects the country to reach that budget. And he's actually stated that he doesn't believe raising taxes, including corporate taxes and income taxes during a war, is right. And instead, he plans on freezing planned tax changes and efficiency measures in government ministries, as well as a complete freeze on the salaries of Knesset members, ministers and senior officials. Now, this in conjunction with the recent downgrading of the credit rating, as well as skyrocketing spending on the military and civilians, is placing the government under immense pressure to ensure they maintain fiscal responsibility and credibility during this ongoing war.
Today, all around the Western world, we hear chants of Free Gaza. Unfortunately, most of those chanting are either Hamas terror supporters or don't really know what that means. But they are right that Gaza needs to be freed, not from Israel, but from the oppressive and brutal terrorist organization Hamas that has for 2 decades brainwashed generations of youth and children with fundamentalist ideals and a culture of terrorism. And so now, looking forward, after this war, after Hamas's defeat, what needs to be done to ensure that Gazans are not once again exploited by radical Islamist ideologies and terrorism? Joining us now in the studio to discuss is Shraga Biran, the author of Liberating Gaza, Breaking the Cycle of Poverty, Fundamentalism, and Terror. Shraga, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for calling.
So what does need to be done? I mean, you know, after World War II, the Germans needed to be denazified. Presumably, this is also the case in Gaza. What
they have to be the Hamanization of Gaza. But I would like to talk what has to be done here and now, because the reign of what I'm calling Biden as the Noach Tzaddik Haya B'Yamav, as the just man of the world, and he has a legacy that has to be remembered. His legacy was that poverty is creating fundamentalism, and fundamentalism is creating terror. Now you have to understand, Gaza is the poorest area in the world. Poorest. $1,200 per capita per year. $100, less than the minimum. There are 500 apartments, let's call it places, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people are living in camps and so on.
Despite, by the way, the billions that's been funneled into Gaza.
We and the world has, invested into these gangs. They've invested $40 billion during the 17 years of Gaza reigned by Hamas. During that whole period of time, what happened? That they've become more poorer than they've started after 2007. And the elections have not been anybody which says that they have a right to stay there. It's a fake elections. It was brutal elections because the ability to find somebody which is offering something to the poor people attaches them to this story of fundamentalism. But I want to say what has to be done now. About a week ago, there was a meeting between President Xi of China and Jake Sullivan of the United States. And it was a call from the Chinese, let's meet. Let's meet and see how we can solve the problem of terror all over the world. Because they are speaking in their speeches about the global problem of terrorism. You have to understand that the global terrorists are continuing to work. Nobody knows about it. It's not published, but during the years from 2007 until 2023, 70 years, they've been murdered and brutally murdered. 145,000 people all over the world. 145 people, it's a fact, it's a numbered people.
145,000
you can find in our book the exact numbers. It wasn't published, and it wasn't published by purpose. It wasn't published because the people had to know with whom we are talking.
And so you're saying there should be a joint U.S.-Chinese...
What we are calling our humble eye. So what I'm saying, if China, Xi Jinping and Biden will meet, and believe me, that can be done in 2 months, because if it shall be postponed, the process of making decisions with a new administration, it can kill the whole story. Such arrangement between the two countries can solve the problem of Gaza, and it can be done by kind of a business kind proposition, which means that Gaza can become, in 5, 6, 7 years, a Garden of Eden, because it has oil, it has gas, it has a port, it has electricity, it has wonderful elements of land. It can become, we have shown in our book, about 8 properties that can be, by investment, business-like investment, create with the, on such a summit, make a closing, a business kind closing with firms which can do the job from the Chinese part and from the American part.
All right, well, Shalaga, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
And now for some positive news. The Israeli delegation for this year's Summer Paralympics in Paris has racked up an impressive tally of medals. So far, let's go to ILTV's Devo Klein for more info. Devo, what can you tell us?
Hi, Lidar. As you know, we were ecstatic last week when Paralympic swimmer Ami Omer Dadon won gold. Well, he has now doubled his personal tally. He has won another gold now with the 100-meter and now with the 200-meter swimming freestyle competitions. Now, this, of course, is on top of his 3rd medal, which was a silver. We're currently at a total of 7 medals. We have 4 gold, 1 silver, and 2 bronze, with many of them coming from this past weekend, arguably one of the toughest weekends for Israelis since the October 7th massacre. So let's hear a little bit more in the following report.
All eyes were on the Israeli Paralympic team, who has so far secured an impressive tally of medals. Last week, we saw the winnings of Ami Dadon, who won gold in swimming, Asaf Yasul, who won gold in taekwondo, Marc Malier, who won bronze in swimming, and Paralympic champ Ami Dadon again with another silver. Dadon's streak didn't end there, as this week he secured his 3rd Paralympic medal and a 2nd gold when he won the 200-meter freestyle in the S4 disability category. Israeli rowers were also successful on Sunday, taking home gold and bronze medals, offering a glimmer of light and hope on such a dark day.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines crafted with generations of expertise.
And now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, sunny skies and warm weather are expected. Temperatures are anticipated to reach highs of 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Lidar Gavelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.